So I want to welcome everyone here today to our second Exploring Global Online Marketplaces webinar. Today's webinar will focus on the UK region. For anyone that missed our last webinar, a link to the recording will be sent out along with today's recording in the follow-up. They will also be made available on YouTube over the next few days. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Evan Lynch. I'm the market advisor for global online marketplaces based in the London office. And today I am joined by Lorcan Sheehan. Lorcan is the founder and CEO of Performance Supply Chain, a practitioner-led supply chain consultancy firm with offices in Ireland, the UK and the US. The firm works with companies across healthcare, high-tech, retail, food and drink, and logistics industries in Ireland and internationally. Secondly, I'm joined by Gerry Collins. Gerry is a senior partner at Ecovis Wingrave Yates, a general practice accounting firm located in Soho, central London. Ecovis were the fastest growing firm in the UK top 100 firms last year. Gerry specialises in helping overseas owned businesses set up and expand in the UK. Gerry has 20 years experience in this space and has worked with EI for over 10 years, assisting Irish companies set up in the UK. Gerry deals with all manners of early stage issues, including legal setup, initial tax, and various commercial considerations. Thirdly, I'm joined by Andrew Stanton. Andrew is the VAT manager at Ecovis, who has 20 years experience within the VAT field, undertaking many roles, Andrew's own words, starting as the dreaded VAT inspector with HMRC, and then via the Big Four and a number of in-house roles. He landed at Ecovis 15 months ago and now assists with all manner of VAT customs queries from Ecovis clients. We are also rejoined today by Frank Berg, marketplace specialist with over 20 years e-commerce experience. The purpose of this webinar today is to highlight the UK marketplace landscape. Whether you're only beginning your export journey or a seasoned veteran, we are sure you will find this session useful as we dive in to the opportunities and trends that this sales channel presents, the logistics involved with marketplaces, and a look at VAT concerns. Now I will hand over to our first speaker, Frank Berg.
Thank you very much, Evan, and good morning to everybody. Evan has already introduced the agenda, which I have now put on the screen for you. 5 blocks of roughly 10 minutes each. And we have a flexibility, have questions and a panel discussion right at the end, and we should be finished within the hour. My slot, I'm going to talk to you about the opportunity of selling on marketplaces in the UK. I will talk a little bit about the seller's journey, but that is more to introduce the other speakers. So without further ado, the opportunity splits up in 2 parts, why the UK and then why marketplaces. So let's start off with why the UK. It is the largest e-commerce market in Europe, and it's in fact the joint 3rd or 4th largest worldwide together with Japan. It is massive. The e-commerce market is $250 billion US dollars, which represents about twice the size of Germany and France, or the same size as Germany and France together. The other thing is that in the e-retail market in the UK represents 25% of total in the UK, total retail, all retail combined in the UK. And that is very, very unique if you compare it with other countries. I can only think of a few countries that have a higher percentage there. In Ireland, for comparison, it's 16%, similar to Germany and France. The market is also very sophisticated. Because of its size, I think it has more channels and solutions like logistics solutions, VAT solutions, marketplaces that will help you to sell and to do better in the UK than I think anywhere outside China and the United States. Of course, there is a close proximity. A lot of things have been put in place over the years of trading together. And the cultural and language fit in itself does not necessarily help, but what it does do is it makes it a lot easier to assess the opportunity, to talk with suppliers, to talk to customers. So it makes life a lot easier for everybody working it. Then the opportunity, talking about why marketplace, and I'm going to put that into a few slides and build up the slides. Not only is e-retail in the UK bigger than in other markets than in other countries, e-retail is split up in marketplaces and maybe social media, and then of course the web shops. But the UK marketplace share of e-retail is 40% or even higher, which is substantially higher than any large country in Europe. So marketplaces are massive in the UK, and it's by far the largest marketplace country in Europe. And it is expected to grow ongoing. Now, this is global information, but there is no reason to believe it's different in the UK. I've seen a lot of statistics around this, and this is the sources provided here. But if you look at the next 3 years and you look at total retail, marketplaces are forecasted to deliver 35%. That's more than 1/3 of all the revenue growth in total retail. So there is a massive growth coming worldwide, and that undoubtedly happen in the UK also. I would also like to mention two more topics that have to do with the growth of marketplaces. The first one is how marketplaces are now rated above any other retail channel in all three main phases of customer experience. And this is research that's done by a group called the Thomson, the Rundeman Thomson, and they do this market research every year, and they look at shopping habits and shopping preferences. This is the first time this has come up, and for the first time, in each phases like inspiration, search, and purchase, marketplaces are scored higher in terms of customer experience than the other channels listed, a higher than search engine, higher than brand sites. And I thought that is remarkable because intuitively, I would say when people look for inspiration on what to buy and look around, they will rate search engines or social media channels higher. But for the first time, again, globally on average, marketplaces are scoring higher in terms of customer experience. And customers prefer, like the fact that there's more choice, there's superior product information, consistent product information, there are better deals, there's a one-click checkout and a quick delivery. So that is it from the customer's perspective that drives the growth. What is it? The third point I mentioned here is marketplaces are exceptionally easy, or have made it exceptionally more easy to expand into other countries. There is a ready-made ecosystem available. There is not just an advertising board, a checkout facility, but many marketplaces come with logistics and VAT management even. There's an immediate credibility because of the aura of Amazon, eBay, and the other marketplaces. And it seems to be easy, and it is relatively easy, to click on a button and then expand to other countries. It's an over-exaggeration of how easy it is. You will see that once you start in the UK, you can easily grow into other countries. Let's have a look at some numbers. The first numbers I wanted to give you is this, which is this shows what is purchased most in e-retail in terms of share of revenue. And clockwise, starting with fashion in blue, we have in orange food and personal care, furniture and appliance, electronics, and then toys, hobby, do-it-yourself, and other products. The good thing for you to know is that in Ireland, this split is roughly the same, but there won't be many differences there. It is just that in Ireland, there's a slightly smaller share goes to online furniture, and a slightly higher share goes to toys and hobby and do-it-yourself products. So to give you size and give you an indication of how big the market is in your particular segment. And then let's look at the top marketplaces in the UK. And here you see really, first of all, it is listed here in visits per month in millions. So Amazon gets 407, let's say 400,000 visits per month. eBay is smaller, but you can clearly see that the UK marketplace country, so to speak, is dominated by Amazon and eBay. You have a next group of specialists, Etsy is in arts and artisanal products, and Wayfair, which have become very strong players in a very typical segment. Next to that, there is a whole group of much smaller players out there that are still very substantial and you need to be aware of. There are at least a few things I wanted you to be aware of, and I will just list those. Next to the marketplaces listed here, there are at least another 20 smaller marketplaces that are not on the list. Some have recently launched, some are specific niche marketplaces. Of course, it is also important to know that overall size is not the only thing that matters, overall traffic. Because these individual marketplaces like Etsy and Wayfair and on the high street, etc., they can be leader in their specific segment. For instance, Wayfair sells more furniture than Amazon. And I think you need to be careful in selecting that. Next to that, it is not just size that matters, but also profitability, of course. Now, speaking to a client not so long ago, he's based in Cornwall, and he's selling lip balm. And he said, I hate selling on Amazon. I love selling on Etsy. I asked him why. He said, Amazon, they don't really, on Etsy, they take better care of me. They work better with supplies. But he said, the other thing on Etsy is for the same product I'm selling, I'm only paying 6% commission, whereas on Amazon it is 15%. So there are a lot of things to consider there. Okay. So the question is then, which marketplace opportunity, which marketplaces are there for you? First of all, I'm showing you the general marketplaces, Amazon, eBay, OnBuy and Frugo. Those are general marketplaces that offer in at least 5 or 6 different categories their products. They have all got their own rules and guidelines, like with the other marketplaces that I'm showing here. And what I'm showing here on the right-hand side, I've listed all the specialist marketplaces per segment. And these symbols suggest what a segment is. This is fashion, electronics, homeware, books, art, and music. These are much smaller overall, but as I've mentioned, they might be a better choice for you, depending on how big this, what segment you're selling in and how big that's that marketplace share of that specific segment is. One final comment here is that, and I've mentioned this before, there are a lot of marketplaces out there, at least another 10, 20, that are not listed here. A very recent addition to that is to this list is, for instance, Truva, which is a kind of marketplace also. They call themselves a marketing platform. There are also other formats out there that seem to be a marketplace, but if you start looking at it, it might actually be operating as a retailer. And that's important to look out for when you do your research. The core question here is the contract that when you buy something on the marketplace, is your contract with the individual seller, or is it with the marketplace, with the market platform itself, in which case it is a retail. And it doesn't really matter if they can help you in your growth perspective, but you need to be aware of that, how you pitch to it, etc. Secondly, I wanted to talk about some of the marketplace, the developments that we are seeing. And I've already mentioned that there are more and more different marketplaces coming up with this hybrid concept, and they start blurring the lines a little bit between the different formats. It doesn't really matter too much, but I think this whole area of expertise, the whole e-commerce side, it's almost time to come up with new definitions of what is what exactly. The other thing we are noticing is that the importance of building leads and building your brand outside the marketplace itself. Whereas previously it might have been sufficient just to put your product on there and people will come to you and you sell it. Second phase, if you look back in history, has maybe been, okay, now I need to do promotions on the site and I do more promotions on the site. But what you're seeing now is that in order to build a brand and even generate leads, you need a social marketing presence. People often set up their branded websites, etc. And I think that will continue moving forward. There are more functionalities being built in. Home and business services, that's how it is called on Amazon, but you see it somewhere else also. So you buy a bed and it then also advertises the locally based service provider that can actually assemble it for you. And then, of course, the next thing is subscribe and save in case you have a product that needs that lends itself very well for regular repurchases. And then two of the things that I have been very excited about, which because it opens up a lot of different markets. We'll hear about this later, but just want to mention two things. I'll just stick, by the way, to the pick and pack and deliver. Amazon has made a deal with Morrison and a few other retailers, and what you're seeing there is that you can now actually buy Morrison products on Amazon. You pay on Amazon, but then you can go to the local Morrison store, the local supermarket, to pick it up, where you can have it home delivered from there. And that opens up a lot of products that normally are too heavy to be distributed effectively, cost effectively. The other thing I wanted to mention, if you look at consumer preference, are just two things. Product reviews are becoming more important. They were important and they continue to grow in importance. It's like asking a friend what would they buy and what would they recommend. And that is really enormously powerful. And that is a great advantage of these firms that already have been selling on Amazon for some time. And the other thing, and this won't be different in Ireland, but in the UK specifically, the cost of living, there is a temporary crisis here, so people are very price sensitive. You need to be aware of that if you start launching. Okay, I said I would talk about the opportunity and the seller's journey. Now, for the seller's journey, we looked at 6 questions in the introductory webinar, and I would ask you to go back to that if you're interested. But question 4 is the one that leads into the next speakers. Do you have the right capabilities in your team? And if not, how do you get them? We identified 5. That's, you know, at strategic level, do people have sufficient expertise in setting targets, supporting the operational teams in all of this? Then the marketing part, customer service, logistics, and finance. For the UK, we thought it would be most relevant to talk about logistics and finance VAT a little bit further. Therefore, we're now moving over to the supply chain logistics and then handing it over to Lorcan Sheehan. Lorcan, over to you.
Thanks, Frank, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So I see you have a company called Performance Supply Chain. We're a specialist supply chain consultancy firm. I suppose help folks in a number of areas on the right-hand side, from sort of performance optimization. But I think what we're really going to be talking about here is how do you use your supply chain to enable new channels and new markets. And if you want to move on from there, Frank, yeah. So I suppose, and you can build this actually up, Frank. I know it's in a couple of pieces here if you want to do that. So I suppose really, a lot of people, I suppose traditionally in the past when you talked about, selling online, everybody got very focused on, I suppose, the sort of the front end of that process, which is, what does the product look like and how does the product get found? And all of those are very important. But I may be a little biased, but I suppose really the piece here is really to sort of stress the importance of your logistics as well within that overall offering that you have in supporting your customers. And before anybody even sort of clicks on your product or looks at your product, they're looking at a number of different things, and you can probably relate to your own shopping experiences here as well. So it's what's my order cutoff time? You'll see that if you order within the next 2 hours, you can have it by Monday or whatever else. They'll look to delivery lead times. They'll look to the ratings and the rankings of you as a seller, whether that's on a marketplace or elsewhere. Returns policy is a really critical one for a lot of folks. There's quite a number of people who will actually look at returns policy and sort of say, well, actually, if it's not a generous policy, we won't actually go through with a purchase. Frank touched there in terms of delivery options. So it's no longer just delivery to your home. It's delivery to your home. It's delivery to your business. It's delivery to what's known as PUDOs, which is sort of pick up and drop off locations, which are these sort of lockers, around the country. People will look to delivery costs, and they'll also look to sort of prime. And I suppose if we look in the Amazon term, and on the right hand side here as well, what Amazon has done, and because it's such a dominant player, it's really sort of set the expectation with customers as to what is an acceptable delivery lead time. And I think this becomes a sort of a challenge in some respects. So if you're a Prime customer in the UK, it's pretty much it's a next day delivery. There are faster options and other options available. But that sets the benchmark. So if you're trying to serve the UK from an Ireland location, you're probably talking a sort of a 1 to 2 day service period, which is probably at the outside of what would be acceptable in a lot of cases. But beyond the click, when somebody sort of hit that commit with your site, there's multiple other opportunities to either sort of enhance the customer experience or to actually not enhance the customer experience. So shipment confirmation is almost expected sort of immediately once the shipment happens, and people are sort of looking a couple of hours after they've placed the order for that. More and more there's the options now carrier pre-alert, where you'll be told your product is going to arrive within a 2-hour window. There's the delivery experience. Is the product sort of delivered, effectively at your door, or whatever else, or is it sort of tossed outside the front door, associated with it? There is a huge amount of focus now on appropriate packaging with this sort of sustainability. People are very conscious of any plastics in terms of plastic fill, plastic tape, and all the pieces within the packaging. So if you're thinking of your brand experience, that experience goes well beyond the website and all the way to the end customer. There's the unboxing of when I open it. Is the packaging suitable from a size point of view? Is the product presented well? And then the last piece here is the returns experience, that if there is a need to return, to be able to sort of manage that and manage return very, very well. So I suppose the key here is, think in terms of UK market, you're probably talking a sort of a 1 to 2 day lead time is where you need to be setting from an expectation point of view. But you need to set those expectations. If there are any challenges in the delivery process, which there can be, you need to proactively manage that and ultimately meet the customer and exceed the customer expectation. If you want to keep going, Frank. So this is probably a more complex slide than I ever wanted to present at something like this. But what I'm really trying to do here is sort of take some of those pieces that we talked on the previous slide in terms of the critical elements of the logistics and supply chain and say, well, look, there are multiple ways that you can do this. And like many things in supply chain, there's no one right way of doing things. And there's no necessarily one right way for every type of product. But if you're looking at, you've sort of 3 options we're looking at here. There are multiple other options you can look at, but we look at sort of your own warehouse. So if we want to do this ourselves, either from Ireland or from the UK, you could look at a third-party warehouse or a 3PL, as they're certainly called, or a logistics provider. That could be based in Ireland, it could be based in the UK, or you could look like an FBA type of solution, which is sort of typically sort of, well, for the UK, you would probably look at a sort of a UK FBA. And what you'll see here is sort of for the different types of solution that are available, you'll see sort of the green sort of means easier, the orange is, it's workable, and the red is something you just need to consider. So on the right-hand side, I suppose primarily sort of FBA looks, okay, well, that looks easy. There's lots of green there. But I suppose the things to consider, within FBA, and we have another slide on it in a couple of minutes, is that FBA can be very, very good where you have a small number of products that don't have a lot of specific handling requirements. We don't necessarily want to provide a very customized service to the customer. And FBA is very good for Amazon, and although they have multi-channel fulfillment capability, if Amazon is your only channel, then that's a reasonable and a reasonably good choice. Amazon have become quite good, however, at monetizing what they do, so it's not a cheap alternative. And then the other pieces here are sort of the big choices are: do I do my own warehouse, or do I look at a third-party warehouse? And a lot of people at the very start of their journey, will sort of say, hey, I can do this myself. And there's all the excitement of sort of packaging and sending things directly to your consumers. And in many respects, actually, you learn a lot by running your own warehouse and actually seeing the sort of the delivery experience firsthand. But I think very quickly companies get to the stage where there's either a significant investment they need to make in getting their own warehouse and their own capabilities up to a professional standard, or potentially working with somebody who already has that capability. So what you'll see, within that, I suppose there's one badge here is everything that's fulfilled by Amazon automatically gets I suppose Prime badge, so it's available with that badge for customers, which Frank will probably tell us is very important in terms of securing that sale. You can get the Amazon badge as well through your own warehouse or a third-party warehouse, but there is a complex process associated with it, and there are some compromises that you need to take a look at beyond that. You need to then take a look, as I mentioned, a 1 to 2 lead time from the UK is probably as good as you're going to get from Ireland. If you base your warehouse in the UK, you have the potential to do that as a sort of a next day more a standard. You are going to see higher delivery cost per unit. Now, this is delivery cost to you as a business, not necessarily to the customer. So for you to fulfill from Ireland, maybe a sort of a 2 or 3 euros per, of a sort of a premium versus doing that fulfillment from the UK if the stock was based there. When you look at sort of fulfillment costs, a lot of people say, well, actually, it's going to be cheaper for me to do this myself. But I would say consider all of the costs associated with it. It's not just a case of having, a person who's being able to do that, and sort of you can sort of run these things with a lot of investment. For you to be able to scale, to meet the demands of customers consistently, to hit the peaks that you need to hit, requires an investment in your own operations if you're doing it yourself. And actually anything that you do with a third party, you're essentially having to sit down and put a lot of effort into defining the service, the requirements with that third party, and also some integration with that third party when it comes to sort of systems and other pieces that goes with that. I'm going to touch on one final piece here on this slide, which is just on returns. So because of Brexit, obviously, we'll talk to sort of the customs process, the process is there. There are a number of steps that you need to go through, but once you go through those steps, that process is quite reliable. So you can actually sort of ship that product, you can have the appropriate customs paperwork, you can make sure that you do it in a way that the customer doesn't get that sort of nasty note from DHL saying you owe me 14 euros and 13 euros for this or whatever associated with it. But getting that product back isn't as simple as you would like. So from a customs point of view, there are processes to do that, but actually there's probably more work to be done from the end customer to be able to sort of make that work well. And what a lot of companies tend to do on the returns, if they don't have their warehouse in the UK, is they will still have a returns location in the UK where returns are actually collected centrally, and then they can manage that process without having to give that hassle to the end consumer. If you keep going there, Frank, to the next one. Yeah, so just very briefly on, I think, fulfilled by Amazon. I've suppose touched on a number of these pieces already. I say it, for standard products that, small numbers of standard products that don't require special handling, and Amazon will even tell you that themselves. You read through, they don't want big products, oversized products. They don't want things that are that aren't moving quickly. They want products in their warehouse that are small numbers of products that are moving quickly, that have a low need for customization. And if Amazon is your primary channel and that's your first foray into marketplaces in the UK, FBA is actually a very good solution for that. I think if the contrary to that is, if that is not the case for your product, the challenges associated with Amazon around replenishing inventory and various other pieces will make that a more difficult solution. I was conscious of time, Frank, so we'll keep on moving on. We can come back to some of these things in the Q&A. If seller full prime also gets you the sort of the badge associated with it, but you'll see here there's a list of requirements that you need to fulfill and prove to Amazon that you can meet the standards associated with that. Typically, there's a trial period of around 90 days where you need to be able to show that you can meet the on-time shipments, the cancellation rates. You're still handing over control of the shipping process to Amazon. They're actually very, very good at that, so that's not a problem. But they also know how to monetize that, so it's not a cheap way of doing things. So it's an option. And again, if Amazon is your primary channel, it is something that you can consider that is without having to go fulfilled by Amazon. Keep going, Frank. Yep. So the piece here then becomes to, well, actually say if I am choosing a 3PL partner, or if I'm assessing whether to do this for myself. It's like writing a business plan in many respects. It's, you need to sort of consider, well, what are the requirements of my business? Any 3PL that you engage with, or any warehouse provider you engage with, will want to understand, well, what do you want? How many products have you got? Is it, one product, 10 products, or 10,000 products? What are the channels you're going to use? Is it just Amazon, or is it Amazon plus your own, or is it Amazon plus eBay plus whatever? Are there customization requirements? And when you're thinking of choosing a 3PL partner, think in terms of a 3 to 5. This is not a decision you make and then you want to change again next year. You want to look for somebody who can get you to your next 3 to 5 years. And if you continue to grow, then there may come a point where you need to grow beyond that. And then take a look at and make a list for yourself of what are the types of things you want from that partner. The volume, the scalability. Do you have a lot of seasonality? Is Black Friday, going to be a huge piece for yourselves? There is that piece of work to be done here around addressing systems connectivity with any partner. Now, a lot of them, if you're using the standard platforms, or if you're using some of the marketplaces, they will all have existing connectivity to that. But you're going to want to have visibility through their systems of where your product is, has it been shipped to your customer? And then when you're going to those 3PLs, see who else they're doing business with. Visit the proposed site and say, actually, am I happy that my product would be coming from here? Order something from one of their competitor or one of their existing customers and see how does the product appear? What does the delivery experience look like? And then there's some pieces here around the commercials, which we're probably not going to get to cover within the time that we have, but be on the lookout for one-time setup fees, look out for transactional fees, obviously the normal ones around receiving, storage, fulfillment, shipping, returns, but also pay a big increase to two things. One, fixed fees. Are there fees that you're paying whether your product is shipping or not? And then how do they handle future increases? So a lot of them will have, inflation riders within that, which has become a huge issue over the last couple of years as inflation has increased significantly. But you need all of those pieces. I've shown on the left-hand side here, a potential weighting. We use something like this where you actually document your criteria. I always sort of say, make a list of what you want, or you'll buy from the best salesperson rather than the best team to support your business. But if you go in with a list of your requirements and then you can score against those requirements, that gives you a more objective way of approaching that. I think of one more slide, Frank, and then I'll hand back to I think it is Gerry afterwards. The change. Yeah, last piece here, just to sort of remember, I suppose, we are shipping across border. It is international trade. So you'll hear something called Incoterms, which is it's a set of terms that's used within the logistics and supply chain industry to talk about who has responsibility for what. Primarily for the one for, and this talks about who has responsibility to export from Ireland, to import into the UK, etc. When you're dealing with end users, you want to be looking at DDP, which is delivery duty paid. And actually, to be honest, most of the carriers now will refuse. A lot of them have a policy where they won't actually accept anything beyond a DDP shipment. Find a carrier who can take your product, having discussions with them. You can do the sort of customs clearance and all of those pieces yourselves. I think unless you're a very large entity, I think you're better off to find a carrier who will do that as part of their service. There are things you need to have for yourself as part of your readiness to export. So commercial invoice, there's about 16 different pieces of information that's required on a commercial invoice. There are some simplifications for e-commerce, but typically it's who are you shipping to, shipping from. Product classification. So customs will tend to need, they don't know whether your product is a slide of beef or so cosmetics or whatever else. So customs have about 6,000 different product classifications. So if you're shipping product across border, you just need to understand which classifications are there for you. You need an exporter of record for Ireland and an importer of record into the UK. For that, you're going to need something called an EORI number. I'll let the folks behind me talk about VAT. And then the last two pieces I'll talk about is one, UK will have some different regulatory requirements. So things like product labeling, they're moving from CE marks to UKCA marks. So you also need to check for your particular products or product types, are there different requirements for those products? And certain products, there's also now a requirement as well for pre-notification of shipments into the UK. So again, particularly if you're dealing with medicinal products or other products, there are some additional requirements that are there. And last point is, don't underestimate, the need to be able to manage inventory and replenishment, because you cannot sell product if it's not available for sale. And with that, I think it's a sort of whistle-stop tour, sort of logistics and supply chain. But I'll hand back maybe to Gerry next.
Gerry.
It's actually, I was going to say, it's actually me.
Hi.
Yes, fine, thank you.
Andrew, sorry, Andrew. Yep.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is go through, Lorcan mentioned whistle stop. This is very much a whistle stop tour of the UK VAT and some of the customs rules that are around. And each bullet point, each slide I'm going to show, and I've got 4, is a webinar in its own right, and I have been restricted to 10 minutes. So we are by no means covering everything. They're very much the headlines, and there will be questions hopefully beyond it. As the slide suggests, the UK VAT rules are dependent on where the goods are at the point of sale, and whether there is a UK establishment for VAT purposes. And it's worth pointing out, for VAT purposes, the definition of what is establishment is different from everything else. So that needs to be addressed. If you don't have a UK VAT establishment, it still may be beneficial to be VAT registered, because that gives you access to various HMRC methodologies to mitigate or defer customs, VAT, excise duties. We'll go into that again over the next couple of slides as well. In the UK, if you don't have an establishment, it is still possible to register for VAT. We can help with that if necessary. The VAT registration requirements, some marketplaces make it their policy to have their sellers as VAT registered. Okay, so again, choosing which marketplace you go on might be determined by that. There are non-established goods, even if the goods are going through the online, and this is where HMRC goes into anti-avoidance legislation. Any goods sold through an online marketplace in the UK is VAT subject to UK VAT, but it is the marketplace that charges that VAT to your customer, not yourself. Your supplier, your supply done correctly and managed correctly would be 0 rated to the marketplace, but then the marketplace takes on the responsibility for charging and accounting for the VAT.
Andrew, I might have given you the wrong slide. Is this not the first slide that you have?
That is the first slide I have. Yep, right.
I do apologize.
That's okay.
You have covered it anyway, but
that's fine. I'll go through, because I'd say we're jumping around because we're trying to cover so much in a short space of time. The important thing to realise is the tax and the customs rules crystallise at the point of sale. So you can't sell something that's currently in Ireland and then say it's in the UK. You have the import duty rules to play around with. Next slide then. So what we're going to go through, if the goods are outside the UK at the point of sale and then brought into the UK, you need to address not only UK import VAT, UK customs duty, UK excise duty needs to be considered. Being VAT registered, just to reiterate that point, could give you a means to mitigate or defer all of this. And the other thing I'll point out this way, this is a moving feast. As the UK divests itself from the EU more, these are changing rules. To ensure the correct amount of excise duty or import VAT is paid, as has been mentioned before, you need to refer to the commodity tariff, but there is now a UK commodity tariff. It's not the EU commodity tariff. So you need to refer to the UK commodity tariff. That will then determine whether there's importation tax is due. The Incoterms has also been mentioned. That determines who is responsible for notifying that, and also who is responsible for doing the paperwork. As Lorcan has suggested, yeah, most people now go DDP. It just moves things away and it speeds up the delivery returns. We mentioned the 1 or 2 day delivery. Having a UK VAT registration and the ability to mitigate and defer UK VAT, UK import duty actually speeds up the delivery of the goods through the UK customs procedure. If you don't have that in place, the goods will stop, your delivery will be delayed to your customer, or your delivery will be delayed to your marketplace if you're delivering it to your marketplace for them to fulfill the order. As stated earlier, the VAT registration is there, and some marketplaces require it or others. HMRC are moving everything online wherever they can. There is something called the Customs Declaration Service. From the 30th of November this year, so it's a couple of months ago, all imports and exports declarations need to be made through the Customs Declaration Service. That also gives you access to the postponed VAT accounting, which is the deferring of the VAT, so the VAT return, also the duty deferment. If you already have experience of importing or exporting from the UK, this is the old chief system, which is being withdrawn. So the chief system is becoming the Customs Declaration Service, single platform. Also coming in from the 30th of September, and it's also been touched on again, courtesy of the Windsor Protocol, certain goods, mainly live animal products and certain plants, will need that advanced notification and advanced clearance from customs. So that again needs to be sorted out in advance to maintain that supply chain distribution to your customers. Next slide, please, Frank. Turning now specifically to the online marketplace and some of the specific rules there. Quick one first, if the goods are in the UK at the time of fulfillment, your customer will, or you possibly will need to be VAT registered and charge UK VAT. HMRC are looking at marketplaces, specifically eBay, to see whether the sellers there are above the UK thresholds or not. The registration threshold is determined by whether you have an establishment here, and that was back on the first slide, and I should have mentioned it there. If you have an establishment in the UK for VAT purposes, the threshold is £85,000 turnover per annum. If you don't have an establishment in the UK, the turnover is 0. So you have to address the VAT registration, if applicable, from day one. If you are not in the UK and the goods are being fulfilled from outside the UK, and you can prove your customer is in business and the total quantum of the supply is over 135 sterling, you could possibly not charge the UK, and it goes through what's called the reverse charge mechanism. The customer will have to evidence that they are in business to the online marketplace, and they should be able to zero rate the onward supply. However, that is easier said than done, especially with some online marketplaces. They don't necessarily interact as much as they should do. Only import and excise duty payable on importation will be driven by the Incoterms and the commodity codes being supplied. The 135 doesn't necessarily avoid the VAT. And just as a reminder, if you're dealing with Northern Ireland, it is now part of the UK, and the rules there are changing even quicker courtesy of the Windsor Protocol. To add my final slide, please, Frank. As already stated, there should be no VAT on B2B sales, provided the following information is obtained. It doesn't necessarily mean no excise duty, just to reiterate that, or import VAT, but both of those could be mitigated if you get your VAT registration in order. You'll see the slide mentions this £135 again. There's no excise duty, just to reiterate, no excise duty, no customs duty on a single consignment valued at £135. If you consolidate consignments and the consignment goes over £135, the entire consignment becomes liable to excise duty and VAT. For B2C sales and fulfilling the sale from Ireland, technically there's no Irish VAT that needs to be charged because it's an export, but the marketplace will still need to charge UK VAT if it's to a private customer. And there still will be VAT and duty on importation. So all of that needs to be looked at. To fulfill the sale in the UK to a UK customer, it's a standard rate of supply, but to still have this quirky little bit, you zero rate your supply to the marketplace. So if you've set up in the UK, VAT registered in the UK, you then sell through a marketplace, you zero rate your sale to the marketplace. The marketplace under anti-avoidance legislation, because HMRC automatically think everybody is at it, will become standard rated. My one takeaway is the bit in yellow down the bottom of the slide, as we've rushed through stuff here. I appreciate I have rushed through stuff. I've left major areas out that obviously need looking into. So take the appropriate VAT advice or customs advice before doing anything. And I reiterate Lorcan's advice, especially with customs. If you haven't got an idea of what you do, get a customs agent in to do it. They understand what's going on. They know what needs to be, what paperwork needs to be given at the correct time. But getting all of that sorted out, getting your VAT position sorted out, should speed up your delivery to your customers through the marketplace. And that's me in just over 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, and apologies for the mishap on the slides at the beginning.
That's okay, that's fine.
From here onwards, Evan, I'm handing it over to you for a panel discussion and a Q&A.
Perfect. So we have around 15 minutes left for a panel discussion and a Q&A. So I do encourage anybody on the webinar, if you have a question, send them in now and we'll try our best to address them. If we don't, we will send out a follow-up email with your question answered. So to start off, or to kick off the panel discussion, just want to get like an opinion from everybody here, just in terms of what are the key developments that you are seeing, whether it's from an overall e-commerce perspective, Frank, or maybe it's from a VAT or customs duties or logistics, that you're seeing in the marketplace kind of landscape right now. So Frank, if you want to answer first in terms of an e-commerce perspective, in terms of key developments.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned a few in the slide that I used, but I think overall the main thing here is the incredible speed of development and speed of the growth of marketplaces. I knew it was growing, but when I started looking at it again recently in preparations for this webinar and got the information together, I mean, marketplaces have developed, they provide a fantastic customer experience, and that continues to develop, and I'm impressed by the innovation that you see all around.
Perfect. Maybe Andrew or Gerry, if you have any kind of key developments you're seeing on the VAT or the customs rules, and whether this kind of development would hinder or make things easier in terms of trade between Ireland and the UK.
I suppose my only comment there is HMRC are getting smarter. They now have a set of regulations and guidelines that they tell their officers to go out and look for this. So you don't have an officer going in blind anymore or not understanding how a marketplace works. If you do have HMRC come in and the officer's done his research, there are books of guidance that he should be following.
Perfect. And Lorcan, I guess the key development I'd see would be kind of convenience culture. Buyers demanding maybe same day delivery, next day delivery. I think the question is, like, in terms of protecting a brand experience and choosing whether to be fulfilled by Amazon or doing things yourselves, like what considerations would you take on board in terms of a SME Irish company? Like, do you have a set of questions that you'd ask yourself in terms of choosing that correct logistical path, I guess?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people, I suppose, two or three things just sort of, I suppose rolling on from your other point as well, from a trend point of view, sustainability is a huge focus right now. The amount of people when they're receiving packages, whether it's from a marketplace or directly from others or whatever else, that are looking at the packaging and you know, tweeting about it or social mediaing about it, you know, is huge. I think the one thing to think through is, I think Frank has sort of, you know, given us a great overview of the multiplicity of marketplaces that are available. The challenge is when it comes to your stock, you know, every time you add a warehouse, you're adding more investment in inventory. And this is one of the things that I think, you know, when people are looking at it, is look at what your current needs are and your future needs are in terms of, well, how many places am I going to need to ship? Am I also going to be trying to ship my product to retail? And if it's multiple places, you're probably then better off looking to a central location for that inventory rather than one for every single marketplace. You can come in there, Frank. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I totally agree with that. And one of the things is that, you know, I've talked about marketing, we've heard about VAT and heard about logistics. One of the tricky things is for anybody listening to this that wants to make a strategy going to the UK or to another country is how all of these things are connected. And you have outlined how one choice, how many marketplaces you go to, has a massive impact on the best logistics strategy, how many warehouses you use, whether you have there or not, and how that is all connected is very, very important. So, like you said before, it is absolutely worthwhile to talk to different experts and also ask about them. Okay, you know everything about the logistics, but what are impacts of these decisions that I have in mind to make on your part, or if I do that, what then happens on the VAT side? And connecting the dots is one of the things that you really need to do. And I think one of the things you best way of achieving that is by coming to webinars like this, but also talk to people that have gone through it, that have learned the lessons the hard way.
No, I totally agree. And the last piece is around sort of product compliance as well. As you know, UK left the EU a number of years ago, and everyone sort of said, "Oh, relief product is still flowing." But actually, in reality, it's only now that we're seeing the changes around product labeling requirements, you know, different product regulatory requirements for different product types or whatever else. We're only now starting to see where we've got diverging products between what the UK market needs and others need, and that's something that people just need to be aware of as part of what they do.
Okay, perfect. I think the next question to everyone here is essentially, you know, is there any benefit to setting up a UK limited company when you're dealing with marketplaces and your other e-commerce presences?
I suppose I'll take that one, Evan. I suppose you need to look at it on a case-by-case basis and probably almost on a marketplace-by-marketplace basis, because different marketplaces may have specific requirements that may or may not mandate you to do this, or even different product types. So that's sort of the marketplace. And then I suppose moving beyond the marketplace, and if you're looking to reach out to customers beyond marketplaces, to say large retailers directly, there may be a commercial benefit to set up a legal presence, or there may be a benefit to having a legal presence to employ staff directly. So I wouldn't look on it as a black and white question. It's one that may change and evolve for everybody on this, and it doesn't have to be a scary option if you need to consider it.
Perfect. We do have some questions coming in from the Q&A, which I will address. Frank, this one will be directed to you. So we have a question here. Currently, the client is selling in America, and they can set and enforce a minimum advertised price policy for selling for the selling of their products. Specifically with Amazon, can this be enforced in the UK? And if not, how can they prevent undersellers?
Okay, minimum retail price is something you can advertise, but you can't determine it as far as I'm aware. So, you know, you go to the buy box, or you go any product page in Amazon, and you can see different people offering the same product for different prices. So it is definitely possible. And the only way you can do something about that is very indirectly. You can't stop competition happening. I think that's not possible in the UK. It's not possible in Europe. It's hard to do that. You can, of course, indirectly threaten to withhold supplies from these people that are selling below the price point that you have in mind, but it's hard to prevent.
Okay, and then there's another question, and probably direct this towards Lorcan. This client's having difficulty getting his products delivered to the UK, so it's B2C for small bottles of liquid, because On Post will not carry any liquids, and all couriers charge per weight, e.g. up to 2 kilos. But for small packages, 50 milliliter size, it is impossible to send to customers. Do you have any suggestions to address this?
Yeah, look, and we see more and more examples like this actually, where for specific product types or particular handling requirements, that it can be challenging. What I'd sort of say is there are a number of other carriers right there. If I see it's Tom who's asked this, I might follow back up directly with Tom in relation to that, if that's okay, Evan. But what we also see is a number of people doing is, and this comes back again into your decision of, do I position my product from a warehouse in Ireland, or do I actually pre-position some inventory in the UK? So we've seen a number of clients, not necessarily in this particular category, where they have challenges getting small parcels because of particular handling requirements or whatever else of those parcels, and they actually choose to move the product over in bulk, where they have a small number of SKUs or whatever else, and actually pre-position that inventory in the UK, and then you've got more options in terms of fulfilling from there.
Perfect. And then I guess time for one last question. Frank, I guess you'd be best placed to answer this. Client is Irish based and just started FBA into the UK. Are there any resources available for help and support that you could recommend?
Support for
that they've just started the FBA, so they're being fulfilled by Amazon. So just in terms of resources that are available for them to support them with their kind of being fulfilled by Amazon, things to do, things not to do.
Yeah, there definitely is help. We can talk to a lot of people, also people on this panel, on that can help look at you know, what is the flow now, how efficient is it, how are the metrics that Amazon has for this, how do you do stock replenishing, all of these activities. I think if you talk to any of us, you will get different pieces of feedback that can help you to grow further or to optimize the whole supply and route to market activities.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, just contact any of us or all of us, and you'll get some bits of information that should help optimize the routes to market and optimize your exporting to marketplaces.
Perfect. I guess we are at 12 o'clock and I will call this session to an end. It's been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank everyone on this panel for their really insightful presentations. There were another few questions we wanted to discuss during the panel discussion, so I will get the panelists to answer them, and we'll send them out through follow-up emails. So that is it. Thank you for joining the webinar. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
See you soon.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.